Welcome back. Today we're going to be heading up the bump track at Mount Disappointment. And I used to come out here probably 30 years ago. I think it would be the first time I drove the bump track. And it's always been a gnarly sort of track, but it doesn't get very little maintenance, and I don't think it's had any over the last 10 years. And there's a certain section right up near the top of the track where it just gets really wild. You've got a lot of water erosion, which has showed up the rock face, which runs off angle on the side of the track. You'll see what's coming up here shortly. But on top of that, this is where all the big rigs with the big tyres and all the kit come out to play and have a bit of fun. And there's certainly nothing wrong with that, but as we know, with all the big rig videos and that, it's usually full noise and ripping the crap out of the track. So that's made it a lot more interesting as well, and one of the reasons why I wanted to bring the disco up here. As you know, most people that have been watching, the reason I've chosen the disco and driving it with very little modifications is I've gone the different route rather than choosing a vehicle that needs a lot of modifications to go off-road. I've chosen a vehicle that's great off-road, and I'm doing very little modifications to it, and just showing people how great these things are and where they can go without all the modifications, as opposed to probably the less capable sort of vehicles that have to be fairly modified to do the same thing. Like, you're never going to get something like a Dodge Ram or an F-250 onto these tracks and mucking about without huge amounts of damage. And most of them just won't be able to get over a lot of the obstacles. I mean, it's the same old thing with four-wheel drives. It's basic physics. The more weight you're carrying and the bigger the vehicle, the more you've got to modify it to go off-road. The smaller and lighter the vehicle, the easier it's going to do it off-road. Okay, now with that being said, we're just starting to get up to where it starts to become interesting on the bump track. A lot of the earlier stuff on the bump track I haven't got in this video, but I'll be coming back again to do the track from a whole different perspective next week and drive it completely different. And I will capture the bottom part of the track. There's a few bits and pieces in there worth putting up in the video as well. Okay, now you can start to get a bit of an idea of the water erosion on this track and how it's very off angle on the rock side. But a lot of it you can straddle from both sides. Up here where this big tree is on the corner here, this is where I took out the back window. And the reason I took out the back window here is purely because I wasn't concentrating. I was mucking around trying to get the best camera shots of driving up here, and stupidly, while I'd set the drone up and got it all into position and that, and then just took straight off and drove off the angle I should have been on. And it's something that I've mentioned many times while out filming on the other videos, is that you should always check where you are on the ground again before you take off after setting up all the shots and all that. Because what happens is you completely forget where you are, and usually I'll pull up on top of something gnarly, readjust the camera, and then take off. I've got into some serious positions by just taking straight off, but usually I'll get out of the car and have a walk around and just a readjustment before I take off. But that didn't happen here, and you'll see here as I come past, bang, straight away, that was the rear window smashing, and it caught me by surprise. But you can see what I've done here. I've driven off the edge instead of straddling both sides. I've driven off the edge too close to that tree, and it's leant right into that bank and took the window out. And you can see that once I'd taken the window out, I knew that it was going to do huge damage to the side of the car, so there was no point mucking around trying to winch it off it, and that was just going to be damage anyway. So it was just, I knew then that I was just going to be replacing the quarter panel, so I just kept it full steam ahead. But you can see how off angle it is here. You can see the weight's transferred right over onto the side where the bank is. You can see how easy those wheels are spinning up on the rock surface. Another thing that happened here too, it had a light shower of rain just before I come up. And also what had happened, I'd been to Melbourne and picked up a heap of stuff. So this was just a last minute thing on the way back home, hitting the bump track. So I'd got in here about 5 o'clock after daylight savings had finished. So it was just about to get dark. And you can't pick it up on the camera because it really picks up the last little light. But this is well and truly after 5 o'clock. This is a really good show here of being on the limit of the art, not so much the articulation, but the limit on the traction of the tyres. You can see that these are only really road bias tyres. And with that, just that little bit of water on the rock surface, it's making it really, really slippery. And without a front diff lock, it's just making it really hard. But those people that are really watching, they'll see that those axles are pretty much touching, or very close to touching, on the crest in the centre of the track there. And this is going to be your biggest problem with anything that's standard, is you're going to be hung up on your axles on that crest in the centre of the track. This is a spot where the water runs down, but you'll see that there's been rocks and that thrown in place, and where a lot of these steps up, where people have adjusted the track and that, they've got big holes in front of them where, you know, people rocking up on 37s to clear the rock, they won't, 99% won't just walk over it, or either that or it's wet. They'll just get up to that rock and then they'll just light the tyres up and just dig big trenches in front of the rock. So anyone coming up in a standard vehicle or a near standard vehicle is going to have a lot more of an issue. But here I am, I'm just getting out to assess some of the damage here, but more importantly, go and pick my rubbish up from the back of the disco on the track. I could see when I had the look down at the screen and I could see that view from the back of the car, I thought, something doesn't look right there. Something that's definitely worth mentioning at this point too is because I was getting in and out a lot to do the filming and I was walking up the sides of the track, mate, there is rubbish here everywhere. And the grubs that are coming up here and mucking about and leaving their rubbish behind is just ridiculous. Drink bottles, food wrappers, the whole lot of the track's just littered with them. And especially, it's annoying when you've got a track like this that we're still able to use and it hasn't been locked off. It's just been abused like that. And that's exactly what gets them locked off. It's just, the rubbish there is just ridiculous. And even further, where it gets really gnarly up here even further, there's tail lights from Nissans and, there's just mountains of stuff that's just been thrown off, that's been ripped off while they've been going through there and just thrown into the bush. Bumper bars, steps, really, that's going to get us locked out, and it's such a shame. This is a good track, especially because it's so close to Melbourne. And you do any modifications to your vehicle, you can come out here and test it, and if you break it, it's not hard to get it home from here. And because I was losing the light being so late in the day, I had multiple crashes here with the drone as well, just not being able to see the little sticks and branches. This was a very lucky one. It was up quite high and landed on the rocks, but it didn't break the gimbal, which was really good. But it was a lot of work going on here trying to fly the drone and drive the track and work out where the best camera angles were going to be. I've left a bit of this stuff in here where I'm now at the limit of the tyre height and the diff is now pushing up the centre of the track. You'll see where it's leaving marks in a second, but I give it a few times with momentum, thought I could get past onto a bit where it rose up a little bit. Now, if I was on big tyres here and had diff locks front and rear, I'd try and push up here and straddle it on this side where the camera is and just clear it. But because I'm on the road by skinnies and there's no diff lock in the front, it's just too hard to push up onto the side of the bank here, especially because it's steeper here than you can see in the camera angle. And what was also happening is it's quite off-angled into the bank still, which you can't really pick up from where the camera's sitting here. Now, if I had kept going backwards and forwards and beating the shit out of the car like a teenager, I would have got past it. But so I actually got out here and knocked a bit off to the centre of the tracks so I could drive over it easier. But it was something I should mention here too, is I had about 15 PSI in the tyres. I could have went down a little bit more, but what I wanted to try and do was push up on the bank here a little bit further up. And as it was, when I got to the end of the track, I had a lot of mud in the inside of the rims where I had pushed up onto the bank, and it just filled between the tyre and the rim, which ended up letting one of the front tyres down. That's right, I just remembered one of the other issues I had going on here as well is that I hadn't charged the hand controller up, so I had to, when I got out here to dig the crest off to get past, I had to shut the drone down. Normally I'd have the drone running the whole time, but the hand controller was out of charge, so I had to shut that down a few times, which was another pain that was happening. Just to conserve the battery, because we were just starting to get to the best part of the track. And there's no doubt about how many of the bigger wider body cars that have tried to come up here have got some very deep racing stripes on the passenger side. And of course, those with all the gear, all you got to do is just drop the wheel up on the high side and you just straddle a whole lot and drive it easy. But it's a lot different story when you're trying to get a nearly standard vehicle up here on those skinny road tyre 30s. Here we go, we're out of the car and we've got the phone set up on a dodgy tripod on the rocks. I forgot well, I didn't have the tripod with me, the proper tripod. So we're at the stage here where I was at the limit totally with traction, but the problem was that the centre of the diff was just landed on the rock and there's no digging the rocks out. So, and I couldn't push up onto the bank. I would dearly love to push up on the bank, but because of the tyres I was running and no diff lock in the front, it was just too hard and just kept slipping back down. But so I just winched over the big part here. You can see I've got the wheels turned out here, so it's not pulling me into the side of the bank. I'm trying to get a bit of a drive out as I'm winching. But yeah, because of how hard it was sitting on the rocks, I decided to give it a winch rather than break anything. Now, the other thing that was going on at this point here also was this is a spot that tests out all the big rigs as well, and a lot of them have fallen off the bank and they're in the hole here, and the 37s are ripping out any dirt that was in front of those rocks. So if you're coming up here on 30s, you're in a world of hurt, because those holes are really big, and that's pretty much the reason the diffs had landed on the rocks, because any dirt that was in those holes was now gone somewhere way back down the track. Get a real good look at that really aggressive tread that I'm running there now. I'm not sure Bridgestone had this in mind with their jewellers when they designed them for the Troopies, but I can tell you these tyres have really done well, you know, especially on some of the gnarlier stuff. You know, they come up Barkley River Jeep track, you know, hardly even spun a tyre. Now, I've just decided, soon I got the winch out, just to winch over this next bit as well. And I could have actually driven this with a bit of momentum, but seeing the winch was already out and up at the tree, I decided to winch it rather than do any stress or damage to the vehicle. And another thing to mention here too is that keeping with the whole thing of this discovery of choosing a good four-wheel drive to start with and not spending a lot on it to go off-road, the winch itself is a Ironman, I think 10 or 11,000 pound. But anyway, it was a winch that had stopped working because it had water in it or whatever, and I picked it up off Marketplace for $100. And here we are. I pulled it apart, cleaned it, put it in. It's like brand new. And here we are out on doing all the tracks for $100, rather than, you know, anyone that knows some of these big rigs run around with all the gear, they've got a winch on the front of them that are worth more than the disco. And that in itself always brings a smile when I'm out on the trails. There's nothing wrong with having all the gear, but it's a head scratcher sometimes. Like $7,000 or $8,000 winches, that's just out there. Okay, we're about to drive the last bit of the track. It's pretty easy sailing from here on. There is absolutely no doubt how supremely capable these vehicles are. That 100-inch wheelbase and the balance of the aluminium clad body and that long travel coil suspension is just a package that has never been matched off-road in a mass production four-wheel drive vehicle. Everyone's tried to copy it since it came out in 1970 on the Range Rover Classic, but no one's ever matched it. Not within a comfortable on-road vehicle as well. That's where Discovery and the Range Rover Classic win. is because the vehicles are actually really, really comfortable. They handle well as well.
Some extra heavy duty cut and compounding.